there's so many times where we have a project or a campaign that we launch, and like I'll hand it over to someone new on my team, and I just want to see what they can do. And like it may not work, but I want to give them a shot and like give them a sense of ownership in a way, but a safe place to play and learn so that we can all grow.
You'll find really talented, really driven, really ambitious people that, you know, whether it be just like yourself or even better, that are taking those things and running with them and then improving on your systems and making it better. And that's what it's all about.
One thing that I've noticed too in working with you and your team is how much you are dedicated to growing the people from within and fostering talent that you have and developing them.
Welcome back to the Indulge podcast. I'm Marlon Gordon.
I'm Melissa Santel. And this is Bryce Bonsack. Today we are talking to him all about the wonderful world of the Tampa Bay restaurant landscape. He is the chef and owner of Roca, as well as the culinary director of Taste Pretty Good.
And he is also the guy that everybody always mentions on this podcast. So I am super excited to meet you today. So Bryce,
Pleasure.
Give me some backstory on you.
Well, I opened up Roca coming on almost 5 years ago. So that was my first restaurant as an executive chef, first restaurant as an owner, first restaurant ever basically, besides working as a sous chef and line cook for various restaurants in New York and in Alabama and things in places like that. So it feels like a lifetime, and it's also feel like a blip at the same time. So now we're transitioning into basically taking that success and all the ups and downs and the roller coaster that it's been, and I feel like we've discussed that at length in other formats, but translating that success into opening up the opportunity for other restaurants in Tampa Bay area and providing some room for growth for our company.
Well, before we get into all the cool stuff happening in Tampa and stuff that you're working on, like I want to know you from the beginning. Like, what made you want to be a chef?
I don't know. I think I've always been culinarily interested, I guess. I never, I didn't grow up in a family that worked in restaurants. So, unlike Melissa here, and it's not like my grandparents spent every day showing me how to cook a recipe or anything like that. But my parents, they took us traveling a lot. It's one thing they really did. Besides Antarctica, I've been to every continent in the world by the time I was like 15. So, that sort of sparked an interest for sure. And then I don't know if it was the ADHD in me in college or whatever, but I was less interested in sitting in a classroom. And I feel like that's the story with every cook. There was I just hated going to school, and that was more of an adrenaline rush, and one thing led to another. So, I worked in some restaurants for beer money and when I was going up at Auburn University. And then I started thinking about it more seriously, went to culinary school in New York, worked in some Michelin-star restaurants in New York. At that point, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I got to, really attack it and not just sort of, I really got to get serious really quickly because, when you're 21, 22 years old and you're thinking about it rather than, I've got guys that are way better than I was when I was 21, 22, like by far, that are working for me now. And I'm kind of jealous of them because I look at them and I'm like, all right, you could be really, really, you could go places if you keep at this. So, but it's a young man's game or a young person's game. Your body gives out after a while. It's, so I don't want to compare it to professional sports, but it is sort of that timeline.
How many hours do you work a week?
It depends. If we're opening a restaurant or if we're, things like that, it could be upwards of 80. If you're in a better spot, you're working in a better spot more like 45, 50 hours a week. So
yeah, you guys put in some work.
Yeah. And I mean, up until Bryce and I started dating, I also didn't realize how many meetings chefs and the culinary team and the GMs are attending during the day before service even begins. And then, of course, you're getting ready for service, you're having family meal, you're having pre-shift meetings. Mm-hmm. It is so much more than just them coming to work at 5 and then leaving after dinner service, which oftentimes his team doesn't get out until midnight, 1 a.m.
That's a good night.
Yeah. after, and
3
you
in the
close,
morning.
yeah, you close at 10, right? So it's crazy to think about. They really are so present so many hours of the day. I've definitely learned so much more about it. Working in restaurants as a food photographer, just being part of like the overall scheme of things. But one thing that I've noticed too, in working with you and your team, is how much you are dedicated to growing the people from within and fostering talent that you have and developing them. And I think that that's a good segue into kind of like your new role that you're stepping into with Taste Pretty Good too. So talk about how growing talent from within has kind of helped you position to be in this new role.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. It's sort of it's the if you're gonna work and do everything because you can do it better than the guy beneath you, you're just gonna be you'll never. It's sort of unsustainable long term. Like we talked about, it is a young person's game. So, and you'll never provide that actual room for experimentation and for them to fail and then learn from their mistakes. So. And you talked about, being in meetings more and stuff like that. If you're going to make that step, you're going to need to learn how to delegate, which is something I struggled with for the first few years, and then I've gotten better at recently. And it's something that, as you are growing a company and Roca started off with 30 employees total, maybe a little bit shy of that. And that was like, to cover all the off days and stuff too. So you never have more than like 20 people, 25 people in the restaurant. At any given time. And now we're closer to 80, 85 just at Roca. So, I mean, we did an expansion, all that stuff. So we didn't start off with meetings and all this other stuff. It was very just like show up, get just hope to get to the end of service, and then it was going into war every single day. Now we're trying to be we've been gradually getting more organized, more structured. There is a little bit of a corporate aspect that you need to bring to the table if you're not going to lose your head every single day, and so that provides a little more stability for everybody. But as far as that goes, that you need to have generally. I'm not the best communicator outside of work in terms of like in person. When it comes to emails, I don't think I'm alone in the chef world when it comes to our ability to communicate on the phone or on the computer.
No chef has ever filled out our onboarding form.
It's the reason why we got into kitchens in the first place.
Because you probably did it for him, right?
Most of us
he
are.
filled it out on the way here. Okay. Let's talk about that.
That was basically as good as it was gonna get. So
Yeah.
that's like doing homework in homeroom.
Did you actually submit a headshot too?
I
The
did.
form?
He
Man,
did.
I was gonna
he is
skip that
on it.
step too.
I know.
He is
He was
on
like,
it.
I'm not going to attach one. And I was like, yes, you are.
Please do it.
Please do it. But no, he picked a good photo. So we have all the content to work with. It's a first.
That is awesome. We
Oh.
appreciate that, Chef.
Crazy
Thank you very
times.
much. Thank you very
Had
much.
some peer pressure.
Yeah.
No, and I think so. That's you have to learn to delegate. You have to look back. You have to take a step back and say, just because I think I can do everything better myself this right now, does that mean that I can, that someone can't do it better than I can in the future? And I think it takes some maturity into some humility to be like, you know what, let me show this person, and they're gonna make mistakes. Just like I made so many mistakes as a young cook, and I still like look at myself and I see one of my sous chefs or one of my cooks, and I'm like, they're probably a better cook at that station right now than I am. You know what I mean? They get the reps in and all that other stuff. So you have to have a little bit of humility and acceptance and letting people and patience and letting them try to put a dish on the menu, even if you're like, it's never going to make it on the menu, but you want to be encouraging. You don't want to be too encouraging where they think that they're just killing it, and if they're not. So
Yeah, it's a fine line.
It takes a fine line. Like it takes some balance there and some patience and some thought. And so we're going from, we have Roca, we're acquiring Streetlight, and then we're basically have the next 4 or 5 restaurants slated to open over the next year and a half, all different concepts. So there's a real sense of urgency in terms of developing people as best as you can, getting them prepared for the job that I wish I was able to receive before I opened up Roca, because a lot of this was just learning on the fly, and giving them the structure and everything, teaching them everything that they need to have in their wheelhouse, so that when it's time to step up, they are ready to go.
You just hit me with a lot. I wish I had a notepad. There's so many things that I
know,
want to
yeah.
kind of touch on. But I love what you said about like having patience and finding people that are essentially better than you. Like, I am consistently on the hunt to find people better than me, because I do want to scale and grow the business, and the restaurant is no different. And I love how you said, like, you'll let them try the new dish, and that dish may not make it on the menu, but at least you're giving them a shot to explore and to grow and also have some fun. Like, there's so many times where we have a project or a campaign that we launch, and like I'll hand it over to someone new on my team, and I just want to see what they can do. And like, it may not work, but I want to give them a shot and like give them a sense of ownership in a way, but a safe place to play and learn so that we can all grow. I love that.
Yeah, I think I joke around a little bit about, it's almost like the fuel to my fire sometimes is just my own laziness, but I want to, my goal is when I look at anything that I'm doing, basically, and I obviously realize that there's not things that I can just teach, I can just pass off to a sous chef or a general manager or whatever it is. But anything I'm doing, when I started Roca, I would get there at 9 a.m, make all the pasta myself, prep some other things, work on some new dishes, do all the training, sometimes work a station that night, work expo every single night, close the restaurant, make the prep list. And, I had some good help. I wasn't doing it alone completely. But then I started cherry picking a couple items, like, hey, why don't I just show this guy to do this one task?
Yeah.
And then that sort of snowballed into, why don't I have that approach with every single thing that I do?
Yep.
And you know what? You step back and you realize that after some time, this person actually does this better than I did.
Yeah.
Much better.
And that's amazing.
And you won't always find that with every single person every single time, but over time it'll weed out, and you'll find really talented, really driven, really ambitious people that, whether it be just like yourself or even better, that are taking those things and running with them and then improving on your systems and making it better. And that's what it's all about. That's the only way a restaurant gets better, because no one's, God's gift to the restaurant industry. So
Yeah. Do you like to delegate?
To a certain extent. I mean, I like it doing that rather than not just being completely out of the loop, and I like it better than trying to do everything myself. So, yeah.
The reason why I ask is because like I started NxtGen 4 years ago, right? And like I've always kind of like been building the plane as it's flying, so I'm used to always like getting my hands dirty, like being in it, like doing all the things. And then I had a moment literally last week where I'm sitting here, and of course, I'm sure similar to you, people are always throwing things at you. Like, everybody wants something, needs something, which is fine. Like, I'm here to serve, right?
Yeah.
But I got to the point where I was like, all right, I just told this person to do that. I told this person to do this, and this person over here is doing that. And I was like, I feel like I'm a quarterback now. Like, I'm starting to accept the role of someone that delegates so that I have time to lead, because I can't lead properly if I'm always like doing all the things, right?
Yeah, if you're in execution mode, it takes you out of leadership mode. And I've definitely struggled with that in my business. I've been rocking alone now for 7 years and just like pulling in contractors and designers as needed. And that's been great. But there are so many times where I'm like, I need to dedicate time to do this thing, but my hands are tied because I'm in execution mode still. So I'm going to take a page from both of your guys' book. I learn from you and you all the time, like talking about how like we're operating within our little ecosystems that we've built. And it is cool to just see how other people are making it work. And obviously every business is different, but
yeah. So what was your inspiration for Roca?
I wasn't even sure when I came back from New York what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to open a barbecue restaurant, to be honest with you. I've told this people, maybe to only a few people, but I came down thinking I was wanting to do something super casual. And I was burnt out from New York, needed a little break, needed a reset. Wasn't even sure if I was going to be in Tampa, but I sort of in the back of my mind knew I wanted to operate my own thing. And I think I was a little bit more, I don't know, humble or less ambitious, and I was just wanting I know I can do some sort of casual food pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Where were you born? Sorry.
I was born in West Berlin, Germany. My dad was in the army, and, before the wall came down in '89. But I grew up in Tampa for the most part.
Yeah.
So I came back home to Tampa, was sort of crashing out at my parents' house, doing the mid to late 20s millennial thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just recharging because I was pretty burnt out. But I was, we went to eat out a few times here in Tampa, and I'm not trying to besmirch the restaurant scene too much, but I looked at the opportunity here, and I said, we went out to the hottest restaurants in town, and I was thinking to myself, I could do this.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a little bit naive, thinking I didn't realize every single thing that goes into opening a restaurant, and I got pretty lucky along the way on that terms. But I looked at the cooking and looked at the food and said, I think I could put this together. So a little bit of dumb luck and a little bit of brass, but I think we got there some way. So I'm glad I did it. I'm so glad I did it. I think I look at my friends that I think are way more talented than myself, and they've opened up restaurants in New York and failed. They've opened up restaurants in all in different cities and different countries, and it's it's competitive not only with the other restaurants and chefs that you're working with, but all the challenges that restaurants are thrown in different cities and stuff like that. And Tampa's got quite a few we can talk about, but I think Tampa's got a pretty good setup in terms of the opportunity that you got here.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like the Tampa food scene is definitely starting to blow up for people like you.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I want to backtrack for a second because I feel like you're not giving yourself enough credit for the preparation that you did to open Roca. So you actually lived in Italy for a whole year.
Correct.
And trained there, cooked your way through my favorite place in the world. And then you came back and you assembled your team and you opened up Roca. So you not only had that experience that you were carrying with you and infusing into the brand, but you were working on Michelin-star concepts in New York too. So you were
don't
at
let
the
him.
pedigree. You was already in the foundation of Roca. And I think all of those things, in combination with what we've already discussed today with building a really strong culture and fostering good talent, you were able to get a Michelin star.
Yeah,
so,
don't let him be modest.
Yeah.
Do not let him be modest. You're kind of a big deal.
Also, a lot of things go into that, but I know So I decided that we wanted to, that I definitely wanted to open a place here, but I wasn't 100% sure. I still, I went out to California at that time and was thinking about taking a job over there. My friend was working at the French Laundry at the time. I went out there and staged for a week or so, and was considering that just to put that last thumbnail on the resume before I pursued investors. And I was in Guatemala for a month looking at an opportunity down there.
In Guatemala?
Yeah,
What was in Guatemala?
a lot of rich people and not a lot of chefs.
Really?
Yeah, well, for a certain
certain area,
demographic there,
yeah.
not a lot of rich people, but some.
What kind of restaurant would you open up in Guatemala?
I had some friends that I went to culinary school with
Okay.
that, and they just needed some help because they had all the other things set up. So they were opening up a food hall. They had a Relais Chateau hotel with 8 rooms at the Lake Atitlan with a helicopter pad. They needed a chef for that too. So there was some opportunity there, but that would have been a pretty. Part of me wonders if I went down that road. I wouldn't change anything, but I'm just sort of wondering if I went down that road, what that career would have looked like. So,
Yeah.
But ultimately, I got really lucky. A friend of my father's, one of my dad's partners, he knew Nick Reeder from PDQ, and just sort of set up a conversation. And we both at first were like. He's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "I don't know. What do you want? You called me in this meeting." And he tells that story better than I did. But we were sort of like, we were sat in his office, and we were both like, why am I here? But one thing led to another, and I said, you know what? Let me just cook dinner for you. And that led to another dinner. And then he turned to me and said, what do you want? And I said, I want to open an Italian restaurant here because I looked at some of the Italian restaurants, and there's a couple good ones, but I thought, I made pasta every day at Blanca. I didn't know how to do this.
Yeah.
But I don't have that stamp of approval in my own heart to say I can open an Italian restaurant. I'm not Italian American.
Yeah.
So I said I want to go to Italy for the better part of a year and go and learn there, and then come back and open an Italian restaurant. And that was my answer. And he said, okay, you help us out at PDQ and our company a little bit, consult, and then we'll send you out to Italy. And when you get back, we'll open a restaurant together.
That's super
And I was
cool.
like, you know.
Yeah.
I'll just like spit on it.
That's awesome. So,
So it was, you know, there's been a lot more to it than that. You know, that's the easier version of that all.
Yeah.
But that is basically what happened, and credit to Nick Reeder and my business partners for making that dream come true.
So what did you cook for Nick?
I can't even remember, but the first meal was sort of a blur. It was just like it was, when I look back at it, it was so bad. It was like a mashup of like food from Corton and food from Blanca and some sort of Roberta stuff and things thrown in there. It's just
Muscle memory.
Well, you know, when I look at my sous chefs and I look at, you know, young chefs that just went from being the sous chef to like basically being able to put their own menu, it is, I feel they're, it takes a while to do, from taking, I have the talent, I know these recipes, but it takes some time between stepping outside of someone else's kitchen and stepping into your own culinary voice.
Mm-hmm.
And because it just seems like you're doing, I feel like I've seen it time and time over again. They'll go to open it up, their thing. It's like they'll cherry pick a few good recipes that they know. They'll do a little risk on that and stuff like that. But it's really just like, you know, a switched up version of some other chef's food.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it does take some time and some patience. And I think that was the best thing that happened for me, is because I don't think I learned much about how to cook food in Italy. Like, I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but like, I learned their philosophy and I learned some of their approach to ingredients that gives me more confidence. Like, no, don't put that ingredient in there. Don't put the black pepper into that sauce or whatever it is. You know, I learned some of the do's and don'ts, but I already knew how to make pasta. And when I stepped in those kitchens, they didn't, you know, I was half the time I was showing them what to do. And I'm not saying I was that good of a cook. I'm just saying I knew what to do.
Yeah.
But it just gives you a little more confidence. But when I see, you know, over time, you know, Roca took forever to build, and I can talk about how long it takes a restaurant to open. But I was cooking at home a lot. I was cooking with Nick Reeder. I was cooking with some of my friends and stuff like that. And it actually, it gives you some time to just be like, you know what, let me open this old recipe that I saw somewhere, or let me try something that only got to cook once in culinary school, or you know what, we really want to just eat, you know, whatever, burgers or something. And you do that, you take enough time to just actually like cook your own food or whatever, even if it's in a most casual, familiar setting with your friends and your family, whatever it is, you will learn so much more about cooking rather than if you're just behind the scenes in someone else's restaurant. Even if you're doing every single thing for that restaurant, you know, you'll never get the voice that you need to have. From stepping out directly into that, it takes time too. Like if you're, you know, there's all other ways to get there too. If you're, you know, the chef de cuisine at a restaurant, you're cooking someone else's food, but over time you become, whether it's a chef cuisine with a little more power, or they promote you to executive chef and you're putting on your own food. You know, there's different, there's a spectrum to that and all that stuff. So I'm not saying you need to take a year and a half off and go to Italy or whatever it is to get there, but I see all the time where a cook will go from working from somewhere, you know, basically being their number 2 or number 3 or whatever, and then they get to put their own menu together. And it's basically like a few things that they've learned, or it's like a sort of a mashup of 2 or 3 restaurants that they've worked at.
Well, you see that too a lot on cooking competition shows where these chefs will come in and they're kind of using all of the restaurants that they've worked at as inspiration to prepare their dish that they're showing and getting judged on. And there's always controversy around that too. I know on one of the most recent cooking competition shows, there was a little bit of back and forth about a chef making another dish that was from a restaurant he previously worked at and who owned that dish and who really, you know, was responsible for creating it. But to your point, I think in any creative field, like when you're working outside of client work or restaurant work, and you're kind of able to hone your creativity without any boundaries, then that is really when you give yourself the opportunity to say, you know what, I actually like this, or like this lighting, or these recipes, these ingredients together, opposed to like what I've been taught. You know what I mean? That influences like how you show up as your own talent versus kind of doing what you've just been, I don't know, taught or trained along the way.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, even today, you know, yet last night I'm testing a new dish for Roca, and it sort of dawned on me like a couple weeks ago. I was like, we were in Paso Robles for that for that charity wine dinner that we were doing, and we were walking around the market, and I saw some clams, and I was like, you know what, let's go with some clams. What's the hurt? And then I started making this sauce. I started making a stock for we made this clam stock because I knew we needed a sauce for something for the fish dish that we did that night, and that I'd made that stock, and then that thing led to another thing, and then now you're developing something, and that's something I haven't made that stock or that sauce in, I don't know, 10 years, whatever. So. And now I'm like, okay, I remember how fucking good this is.
Yeah.
And why don't we do that, but change it up this way? And we're putting on, now that's becoming, it looks completely different, and it's like evolved 5 times, but that came from a memory of something that I did from a restaurant 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's the maturity and that's the experience that it takes, but like, and that's what it ultimately will end up looking like for young chefs that are putting in the time now and learning my recipes or learning someone else's recipes. Or they're learning techniques or whatever it is, and then they'll eventually have that confidence. It's not it doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen eventually, where they're taking that mise en place, those cooking techniques, that philosophy, and are turning it into their own.
Yeah. It's like innovation. Like, there's no new idea. You're just innovating off of an existing idea.
Right.
But this may be a silly question. Are recipes like, can you own the IP for a specific recipe?
No, it's not a silly question. Actually, a lot of people ask it.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke. I mean, like, basically you're dealing with like logos and your name and image, and maybe trademarking like your name or of a restaurant. But outside of that, there's really nothing you can do.
But like, a recipe is literally like a piece of code that you write, or it's like this. It's something that you're making, and if it's specific to the actual ingredient, I feel like there should be some sort of legal support saying that, hey, like, this is a Roca recipe.
I think you're creating a new occupation right now.
Jobs. Everybody wants jobs.
That's the problem though. It's impossible to do that, right? What are you gonna do? Is Bonefish Grill going to trademark Bang Bang sauce, and then everyone that tosses fried shrimp in a spicy mayo, which is like every sports bar in the country,
right,
gonna not be able to do that? You know what I mean? So
there actually are things that have been trademarked, but it's specific menu items, not the recipe. For example, the Bloomin' Onion and Outback Steakhouse. Recently, there was a restaurant in St. Petersburg that replicated it, and they called it like the Blossoming Onion or something.
Yeah.
And they got served a cease and desist letter from Outback, and they posted it on their Instagram, and they were forced to take it off the menu. So there are interesting nuances.
It's more
to
about
that,
what you're calling it, though.
Yeah.
Because, and it again, that's only if Bloomin' Brands lawyers just feel horny to
they were out for it.
I don't know exactly, because who cares about that? And also, that's more like just bad press and good press for the little restaurant that did it, anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what did Chili's have, the Awesome Blossom or something,
Yeah.
and they have the Bloomin' Onion, and so it's not,
Right.
it really doesn't matter unless it's like a specific name and stuff like that, and then again.
But also, when you're publishing a cookbook, if you're working with a publisher, then that is copyrighted material. But I think that there's some cadence where if you modify a recipe by a certain percentage, then you can claim that it's inspired by that person, but yours.
I get that, but like, using the specific ingredients in a recipe, like, I feel like that should be owned by the person that created it.
Agreed.
I mean, but like you said, everything's been done before.
Yeah.
So how are you going to trademark clams, parsley, and garlic and white wine?
Yeah. Actually, this is a good way to also talk about bar terroir. So I want you to tell us a little bit about the newest Tastes Pretty Good concept, because it is a menu that's built on classics.
Yeah.
So, but you are putting your own spin on the classics. So.
Yeah, we've talked
Tell
about
us
it in
about
passing to friends, but we haven't really gone to the press with it at all. But so we've sold Roca into a mother company that I'm managing partner of, called Tastes Pretty Good, and we're opening up the next 4 or 5 restaurants under that banner. And the first one will be a French wine bar, French bistro, that we are taking over. We bought the old Little Leon space over on Henderson in South Tampa. And we're gonna put together a little, tiny little French restaurant. So, but yeah, the menu is gonna be like steak frites, French onion soup, escargot, things like that.
You are so lucky.
I know.
You're so lucky.
If I always tell people if they could be a fly on the wall for my breakfast,
yeah.
they would hate me probably.
Well, so those are all recipes and dishes and stuff like that we all learned in culinary school or before that and working in restaurants. But like, who's gonna trademark that escoffier, creme, like someone from the 1700s? So it goes back to who knows, how long, right? So, but we're really excited about Bar Terroir. Like you said, it's basically a bunch of classic dishes. There'll be a little bit of our touch on it, a little bit of a modern edge, but I think actually the more we go modern, I think the more we want to make it retro again. So I think that's sort of the emphasis of Bar Terroir. Instead of doing some sort of cutting edge restaurant or French modern cuisine, it's like, let's just make a really nice foie gras terrine, and let's do all these classic dishes that everyone forgot how to make or aren't interested anymore. Let's make it sexy again.
Yeah.
We should just do it how they did it and put it on a nice plate and give them good service. It's sort of a tried and true recipe.
My favorite part about Bar Terroir so far has been recipe testing at home.
I bet. I can only imagine. The pictures you guys post on social media about this, like your typical day at home, all the delicious looking food. I'm like, gosh, I need to move in with them.
Yeah. We adopt people on the regular.
We're in sort of timeout right now. We're doing the Whole30 thing for September.
So I heard.
Yeah.
How's that going?
Miserable.
It sounds miserable.
What day are we on? 10?
8, 9, I don't care. It's
How could he be on 10? Because our last episode was what, last week, Monday? Was
Yeah,
it?
we
So
must
7
be on.
days. 7 days. Oh, no, because you were like 2 days in, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe we're on 9. But yeah, either way, it's been a time.
So what are you eating?
Nothing fun.
Yeah, I mean, no, we're cooking protein and eating vegetables and whatever, but it's like it's a bit of a challenge, and that for the first like little bit of it, it's fun, and then you're just like, God damn it, when can I eat like a piece of corn again or something, or can I just make one pasta?
How do you do your job being on Whole30?
I taste
at
work, and it's we're not like the most hardcore people about it. We're not being super almond mom about it, but at the same time, it's I can still get my whatever inspiration mojo going at work and stuff like that. But
do you feel better?
I mean, we're only in a week into it, so
no different yet.
Not really. I'm just crankier.
I feel better. I maybe it's in my head,
Yeah, it's
but
all in your head.
I'm just like, I haven't been hungover once in a week, so that's a win.
That's good.
But no, eating cleaner has been good, and we're kind of navigating. The first couple of days were hell. We were like, "What are we supposed to do with this?" He was pouting. He's like, "I can't."
Yeah,
be
this
here.
is the first.
Yeah.
This is also Saturday was the first Auburn game I've watched sober, so completely sober. So that was. I don't have any like nails left. My fingers. I was just pouting the whole time. She saw we were up by like 30 points. I'm still like, God damn you.
I was like, I think it's gonna be okay, but I'm just not a sports girly, so I don't get this passionate
I'm not
about
much
these
of a
things.
sports person, but I'm loyal.
Yeah.
So
You are.
It's usually loyalty when you have a team that struggles.
Yeah.
And their two biggest rivals are the two best teams in the country year after year. Mm-hmm. You gotta have a little bit of there's an aspect to that. So.
Yeah.
So are you talking about the other restaurants down the road, or?
So we can go into it.
Is it going to be barbecue?
No, well, maybe a little bit. Not really a barbecue restaurant, but we're opening up. So Bar Terroir is the first one that's going to open. That's in South Tampa on Henderson, in the old Little Leon space. So French bistro, wine bar. It'll be kind of more of a date night spot. It's a tiny little restaurant. We'll be open for brunch eventually there too, but it'll be dinner. After work drinks type thing, and then dates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then so this is going to be this fall. We're not really sure, and we'll go into that aspect of trying to thread the needle in terms of predicting when these restaurants will open and
The
why
joys of
why
construction.
the woes of trying to deal with things that are out of your control. But so we have that slated. We have my chef de cuisine, or my former chef de cuisine, Nick Orr, my brother. He was helping me, basically my right-hand man at Roca, running the day-to-day operations for years. he just recently left to Spain, so we sent him over to Spain. He's working at restaurants all over Spain for the next few months.
Cool.
He might even be out there for 5 or 6 months. We want him to get like I got to go to Italy.
Yeah.
We sent him to Spain to gather intel for a Spanish concept that we're working on
That's
in
awesome.
the North Hyde Park. The new North Rome development. Where we've got a location there that we're putting in sort of it's going to be a little bit neighborhood tapas, but with Nick in the kitchen, helming the kitchen, and as a chef, he'll be the chef partner there. There's going to be a lot of like really nice seafood. There's going to be some, real serious cooking going on at the same time. So it's not going to just be bread with a little tomato on manchego. It's going to be some good stuff going on
If
in
he's
there.
cooking anything like what he's posting on his Instagram stories, then we're all going to make reservations right now.
So we've got that going on. That's going to probably be next summer, sometime around there. We'll see. Every single time I say it, I feel like I moved the schedule back 2 months just by jinx alone.
We'll stop talking about it.
It's 2025.
Yeah.
So we got a Spanish restaurant in the works, Spanish tapas and things like that. Got a couple other things that we're working on that I'm not quite ready to talk about just yet, but they're in the process of planning in terms of getting architects and stuff like that going. But
You can tell us offline. We like a good secret.
Yeah, exactly. But
Well,
those are the big ones, and we're really excited for them. And we're really, between Streetlight Taco, Roca, Bar Terroir, White Wolf Specialties, and to be named restaurant, Spanish-focused restaurant with Nick Orr. We've got a lot of things that we're really excited about and a lot on our plate.
Yeah, well, we should definitely talk about the part 2 of the other stuff that's going to be opening up down the road that you can't talk about. On
For sure.
Next episode.
Let's knock out Bar Terroir.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't go. Yeah, hopefully we don't go down in flames. And
Oh my gosh.
and then we can maybe start to talk more about all these other places. You got to do it one at a time, though. It's exciting, but like I also am enough of a realist to be like, okay, guys, like. My business partners and my investors, I'm thrilled with them.
Yeah.
But I'm like, all right. They're like, oh, we have another location we're looking at. I'm like, why don't we
Let's
just
pump the
let's just
Yeah.
open this restaurant real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, did Melissa tell you about the question that we ask everybody before we sign off?
I think she's mentioned it, but go ahead. I can't remember actually.
If you could have one last meal,
Oh, the
before
death
you
row
die,
meal.
Yeah, what would it be?
Actually, if it is really a death row meal, I've been on it's really addictive. I've been watching this TikTok where this guy goes and looks at every historical death row meal that's ever been requested.
Yeah.
And he just recreates them or just buys it or gets them and puts it down and then eats it or tastes it and then rates it on like a grid. And he's got
awesome.
while he's cooking it, he tells the story of what got him in death row.
Yeah.
Which is also, it's
interesting.
highly addictive
Yeah.
form of media to consume. But most of the time, people order comfort food.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've answered this question before, and I'd be like, I want a big shellfish tower, and I want a dry-aged steak, and I want like some, pasta, and I want some bottles of Chateauneuf de Pop, maybe a little Barolo. And I don't think that
You're gonna be full.
I don't think that's changed, but it is interesting to see people ultimately revert to something like super, like the amount of people that have requested a cheeseburger, a pizza, or fried chicken on that is like almost like 85%.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It
Mashed
is pretty
potatoes,
crazy.
too.
Yeah, lots of just fast food. People will just be like, I want 4 orders of McNuggets. I want 3 McDonald's Cokes, whatever it is, or they'll just go something like that, and it's just like, you know what? I think that people in that situation revert to comfortness. But I think if I'm not on death row, I'm not behind bars, and I haven't been eating jail food for a while, I think I'd rather go big. So maybe some oysters, maybe some caviars, definitely some steak, some pasta. I think I'll stay with that answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of
I
food.
am not surprised by that answer whatsoever.
Yeah, I think I would skip dessert.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would have skip dessert too. Give me all the steak and all the pasta.
Yeah,
know.
maybe some Ben and Jerry's.
Some
Chubby hubby.
I'm kind of a simpleton when it comes to desserts. I'm like, yo, that Reese's looks really good.
For me, it's carrot cake or cheesecake.
Yeah.
For dessert.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
creme brulee girl or a chocolate cake. Tiered chocolate cake. Can't miss.
Well, hey, Bryce, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the episode today.
Thank
I
you.
feel like we have a lot more to talk about.
For sure.
Hopefully very soon.
That went by
Yeah.
quickly.
It
I
did
know.
go by quick. I would love to go to one of your restaurant concepts and do the next podcast.
You really should.
there. You said I shouldn't or I should?
I said you really should.
Oh, yeah. I think we should.
You're like,
I was like, wait, hold on a
First,
second.
first podcast I ever went on was Melissa came to interview me at Roca, way before we started dating. So
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
sharing one microphone, and I was like, it was like the second podcast
That is
I had
hilarious.
ever recorded, and I was like, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, it's gonna be it.
We're flying
Well,
blind here. It was great.
You've definitely stepped it up since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. Yeah. Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on, and thank you guys for watching.
thank you. Cheers.
Thanks.